Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Coffee Tea, You and Me with Coach Powell. This week's episode is going to be so super exciting. We're going to be talking about habit development. We've been talking about habit development for the last 2 weeks, but today we're going to get into how your habit development deals with your kind of spiritual advancement. And I'm going to title this, for lack of better words, In the Spirit, Habits and Spirituality. And I'm going to start off with a story about my grandfather. And then we're going to talk about how some of the great minds have thought about habits. And then we're going to talk about some excerpts from just the Bible today on how habit development in your practice can be used to develop your spiritual concepts, to involve you in the community in a deeper, more meaningful way, to make sure that you are grounded in something that is positive and useful for your life. Now, there's going to be something for you no matter what you believe. So don't think that, this is all just a Christian-based thing. I want you to understand that we've done deep research in all the faith traditions, and we've determined that, there's a convergence of most of the world's religion in terms of how habit development actually shapes your character, strengthens your community, as well as deepens your spiritual life. And we're going to go through some of those things in just a few moments. Before we do anything else, I want to introduce some of my favorite people are going to be backstage, and I'm going to let them pop in as they pop in. But who's already backstage right now is one of my favorite people on the planet, Mr. Daniel Winton. Daniel Winton is a representative operating in the Black, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about his business, and then we're going to keep the party going. Okay, Daniel, how's it going, my friend?
Doing great, doing great.
Fantastic. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about operating in the Black and what you're up to these days, and what we can look forward to hearing from you?
Sure. Operating in the Black, we've been in business for over 7 years. We're a business that was born out of the need for communities of color, women, those that traditionally were not able to access funding for their business. So now, of course, we service the full business community at large. Our goal is to make sure that if you're a startup business or those that are those are truly the challenged people who are having challenges with getting money are those that are started up. So we have a startup business funding program. If you have a 685 FICO score, carry a major credit card, we can get you up to $250,000 with that. Then we roll you over to an SBA loan where we can get you $350,000. So you will be fully funded by utilizing operating in the Black. So I had the opportunity to meet Coach Powell at one of our speaking conventions, and he was quite wonderful, as everyone out there knows, quite insightful. So anything that I can do to support him, and it's always a learning experience anytime I have the opportunity to get around him. So that's why I'm here today. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Daniel. I want to thank you personally and publicly for the brilliant sponsorship of a wonderful dinner we had down in Tampa. I
Mm,
got to introduce you to all my Phi Beta Sigma fraternity brothers, the thousands of us that descended on Tampa, as well as the other thousands of my sorority sisters that have descended
right.
on Tampa.
Well,
And
that was
it
truly
was just,
exciting. It was
yeah,
truly
yeah,
exciting seeing that many quality people, especially quality men, all at one place at one time. And I
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
that you had your sister sorority there as well. I didn't get a chance to meet with them very much, but the gentlemen that I did have an opportunity to shake hands and talk to a little bit, they were amazing. So that was really
Yeah.
exciting for us down here in
Yeah.
Tampa.
So I was excited to be able to introduce you to them, and that's going to continue. Obviously, there's a lot of people who need to know you, need to work with you, need to understand what the offering that you bring to the table, and we're going to continue to try to promote that as much as we can. For those who don't know, how do we get in touch with Operating in the Black, Daniel?
Well, you can go out to our website, www.operatingintheblack.com. You can always give Coach Powell a call. We love to pay referral fees. So anytime, and we just believe in that. Goodness gracious, the hundreds of people that I've met, the amount of business transactions that I've done with Coach Powell, I would have never met with any of those folks without him. So we are very humbled by being given that opportunity. So we want to make sure that we give proper credit for proper people. But our toll-free number, just give me a call direct, 813-669-7742, and just let me know that you refer that Coach Powell referred you. That was
Do me a favor.
813
Do me a favor, Daniel. Put your stuff in the chat, and
Yeah.
I'll make sure I post it on screen
Okay.
as soon as possible. And we'll put you backstage, and we're going to get to keep this party going. Um, as I promised you guys, we've had a very unique opportunity here today, and I want to share a little bit with you, just take you back a little bit. We've been going through the VisionQuest 90 process for the last 21 weeks, and we've talked about what it means to establish your vision and how you should do that and how you should codify and write that down, what to do when it comes to your goals and all that kind of good stuff. My buddy Eddie Tuvin just popped in. Good to see you, Eddie. Be right there with you just a second, buddy. Habits. How do you deal with your habits? Was the topic we're dealing with right now. We've already dealt with mission. We've already dealt with partners. Everything in the VisionQuest 90 process we've gone through, but we're in the last couple of weeks, this last stretch, and we're talking about habits. Today, we're going to talk about how your habits really affect your spiritual practice. How do you use what you've been taught through whatever religious background and all that kind of stuff you've learned to improve your habits. All right, so let's get into it. Before we do that, I'm going to introduce one more person really quick. I got to bring him to the stage. My brother from another mother, really. Mr. Eddie Tuvin is a genius when it comes to financial arrangements for entrepreneurs and small businesses. If you guys are out there looking for a good person to add to your board of directors, I highly suggest that you contact Eddie Tuvin and pay him a lot of money because he's worth it every single dime. Brother Tuvin, how are you doing today?
Respect, respect. RESPECT is what she said. Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. Um, I'm doing okay. I'm pivoting. I'm into lifelong learning. I'm into
Mm-hmm.
lots of love. Love brings it back to you. I'm
Yes, it
into
does.
rational and cognizant and conscientious capitalism. And I don't care who you are, where you came from, what color, what religion. If you're a good person, you're a good person. And if you're a friend of Marvin Pals, you're my friend.
Fantastic. So good to see you, Eddie. I'm gonna put you backstage and we're gonna get this party started. Be back with you. We'll bring you back in just a second. Okay, as we were saying, we're going through what habits and what kind of habits have historically worked for people, starting with that spiritual journey. And so I want to start off with a story. This is the story of my grandfather. My grandfather, Deacon Paul Powell, had habits. He had habits that really were useful to him in his entire life. And it was because of his belief system that these habits worked. Daily, weekly habits, including all the roles and responsibilities he needed to do leading up to every Sunday of his life. And for more than 30 years, he was a trustee, a deacon, and a Sunday school teacher at the local church, which happened to be right across the street from where he lived. Now, he had to balance this out with his full-time job, which he worked pretty much from about 4:30 in the morning. I think he left the house at 4:30 in the morning. He was back home by 3:30 every afternoon, and his duties on the family farm, which we still own to this day down in Southern Virginia. And it was two moments that I really want to share with you today. One was his daily power hour, which he did every day. I watched him do it. And when I was younger, every day he'd come home and he'd sit in his chair. This is the chair that's in my office right now. It's funny because I'll never give up this chair. His little lounge chair. He sat in his little lounge chair with two books. He had the Bible and he had the dictionary. The dictionary he would use to help him with his daily crossword puzzle. So he'd pick up the newspaper. He'd get the highlights of the newspaper really quickly after he came home from work, and then he would get into his crossword puzzle. And any words he didn't understand or words he didn't know, he'd look them up in the dictionary. And then he would write down that word and write out its definition and use it in a sentence, in writing, right there from his chair every single day after work. Right. The next thing he would do was prepare his Sunday school lesson. So he's going into scripture now. He's going to his Bibles, open up his Bible, and he has to prepare his Sunday school lesson for the following Sunday. So he starts doing on that from Monday through Friday. This was his ritual. And then right after that, he would have supper. And then right after that, he load up the truck and go down to the farm and do whatever farm activities he had to do every single day until sundown. And then when sundown came, he'd leave the farm and come back home. And if he hadn't finished up any of the work he wanted to do for his scriptures or anything he wanted to do for a Sunday school lesson or whatever, he'd finish that up. Now, that was every single day in preparation for Sunday. And then on Saturday morning, he would get up, shower, shave, trim his mustache or beard, maybe go to the barber shop. Right after that, he could open up the church and be there early enough to make sure that the pastor was able to get into church and get into his study and start to prepare the Sunday sermon. Because the pastor was also had a full-time job during the day, and my grandfather was a trustee and he had the keys, and so he would make sure that the pastor got into his study every single Saturday morning and was able to prepare that. In the meantime, he was preparing the church. And so if there was a baptismal that had to happen, he was starting to get the water ready and everything for the baptismal that was going to happen on Sunday. And if there was a guest choir or somebody that were going to come in, he needed to make sure that they had whatever accommodations they need to have, and there was food available for them, and they started to gather all the stuff they needed to collect together to make a meal for the guest choir or the guest church or whatever they were going to do for Sunday. And he'd be out of there by noon on Saturday. He'd do all that organizing and all that kind of good stuff. By Saturday, he'd be out. Now he'd be ready. So Sunday morning showed up. Grandpa was the first person to open up the church. He made sure that Sunday school was happening. And he had a Sunday school lesson he had to teach in his class as well. And then he had to pray during the Sunday service to open up the service. And then he had to make sure all the money was counted at the end of service and put away and got ready for. And make sure that all the deposits and everything were made the way they needed to be made. And that's his weekly ritual, right? I'm going to suggest to you that you think about how your spiritual life adds to your regimen, to your habits, to the weekly ritual you have. Now, Mr. Gandhi said, your belief become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits, and your habits become your values. Your values then become your destiny. See, Gandhi knew from the beginning, your habits are everything, and they help you to push action forward. So the question we want to deal with today is, what connection between your spiritual development allow you to develop meaningful habits that improve your character, habits that help you connect to your community, habits that help you ground yourself spiritually? How does the devout practice of your religious ritual help with your character development? How does it shape deeper community connections within your communities and even extending out to the greater community? Gandhi believed that our habits inform our connection to our identity development and our sense of self. And when we're aware of what we do and why we do what we do, we can take the significant steps to shape our future. It can be said that much of what we do today provides a projection for our future. And think about it. If you don't change any of your daily habits or weekly habits, you'll most likely have the same outcomes tomorrow in your future than you have right now. So you have to kind of figure out what habits are useful and meaningful to me. Now, I'm going to this week cite some references from the Bible. I'm not going to read the scripture to you all, but I want to help interpret some of the things that these scriptures might say. And then next week, we're going to get into the overall universal belief system that seems to happen from Sikhism to Islam to Judaism to Christianity and all the other, great faiths of the world, Buddhism included, and see where they converge and what they say about various different type of habit formations. This is super important stuff because when you understand how important habits are, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. When you understand how important habits are to your success and to your development of a peace of mind or your ability to thrive, it's all intertwined in terms of how you do what you do. Psalm chapter 119, verse 56 reminds us that it's important to observe principles, rules, and statutes, which can be interpreted as maintaining good spiritual habits. Right? So when you ask yourself, what are your governing habits? What are your governing principles? What are your values? And how do those values show up in your actions in all the roles that you play? What are the covenants and affirmation statements that you have well written, well thought through, documented, that you are in constant review of and constant reflection on, that help you to guide your daily ritual, habit, whatever it is that you need to do? All right. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 5, verse 14, it teaches us to train your thought and practice. And when you practice what you're thinking regularly and consistently, you improve your discernment. I don't know how many of you have ever seen like one of these judges on these TV judges, right? How quickly they're able to make decisions about things that people seem to be perplexed about. How easy it is for them to just come up with, this is the right choice, this is the right decision, this is the ruling, right? Well, the reason why they're able to do that is because they've made these decisions so often and so much in their past assignments or past. They've been able to go through these things. The things that, if you ever see one of them get stumped, and which is rarely that one of these TV judges, right, they get stumped. It's because they haven't experienced this before. They haven't seen this before. They haven't seen this human behavior. They haven't seen this problem. They don't have a license for it. And think about your expertise, whatever your talent and your gifts are in the universe, in the world, right? When people ask you about those things, you're able to quickly, this is what I think you should do. This is what I think should happen. This is the smartest way to approach this, because you're an expert in that thing. You're an expert in that mindset, in that industry, in that whatever it is that that brings you to your level of expertise. So you can, what seems to be miraculous or mystical to other people in terms of how you perform in that space, really is that you've created these habits to muscle memory. You've practiced this habit so much, you've practiced this discipline so much that you just know the right thing to do, the right way to go, the right thing. But when you haven't practiced, or even worse, you've practiced what's bad for society or what's bad for others and so on and so forth, and that is your habit, then you kind of know it most often when you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And so you can't even talk about it, because people will easily read that, wait a minute, you have nefarious intent. I always tell people all the time the difference between manipulation and influence is intent, right? They look the same in application, especially when you don't know what you're looking at. So if a person is into manipulation, they're going to actually do the same things that a person might do if they were an influential person, or trying to influence you in some way, shape, or form. But the difference in terms of whether that's good or bad, really, if it's manipulation, it's bad, right? If it's influence, it's generally good, right? The difference between that is your intent, and no one knows your intent unless you share it with them. unless you're open and honest and transparent, and all the good things that we learn from, again, good spiritual practice, right? Psalms, the book of Psalms, chapter 119, verse 44 says that we need to, it teaches us to commit to continually keep the law. If that's your daily habit, whatever the law is, you continually keep the law. Understand that it bleeds out into your character. And unless you're keeping the law regularly, daily, whatever the law is, again, you do not have a claim to integrity. You are, in fact, a hypocrite. And in the case of spiritual matters specifically, you have no claim to righteousness if you're not a keeper and a practitioner of the rules under which you have committed in one way, shape, or form. So how does that play out in the real world? How does that play out outside of religious or spiritual practice? It doesn't. Because without having a value system or a moral code or ethical code, and you're doing the things that you're doing just for reasons of doing them, greed, profit, or whatever, you single-mindedly focus on, it's not credible in the space of human consumption. It's something that you can do temporarily. You can temporarily do the bad things, but it's all going to come back to haunt you and come back to bite you at some point in time. And so if you start off doing the right thing, if you start off doing the good things, then guess what? You have nothing to worry about, nothing to be fearful of. You've done the right thing, according to the moral code and practices that, you believe in. And it works out really well. Luke chapter 5, verse 16 says, make a habit of solitude and meditation. Make a habit of solitude and meditation. Daily, you should be quiet, grounded. Practice reflection on your personal affirmation statements. Practice reciting the belief system that you have to believe in, or that you know that is the right thing to do. Do these activities and plan them before you do whatever planning you do for your day, and then after you do whatever planning you do for your day. Meditate on the tasks that you have in front of you, the appointments that you have in front of you. Ask, for the privilege of discernment. Ask for the opportunities to be at your best, and make sure that you are in your prayer and meditation, you're focusing on, bringing your best self to the table, so that you can honor whatever it is your belief system is, right? So you can honor that in your life and in the world. If you do that daily, you're going to be a better person. You have no choice. You have no choice. Psalm chapter 5, verse 3 says, the psalmist speaks of ordering his morning meditation in eager expectation. You should not dread. You should not dread getting up in the morning and doing whatever you do to get closer to God, the universe, the spiritual alignment, connection, whatever it is that you believe in. It should be something that you excitingly do every single day. Now, here's the thing. I want you to understand this. This is how the brain works. Right? We already know this from neuroscience. The more you approach something, the more you do something, the more you tell your brain, this is important to me, and you actively do something along the line that validates that thought, right? What you're doing is you're building that excitement, you're building that joy, you're building that pleasure in that thing. I don't care if it's running in the morning or going out and walking in nature, or doing anything that, again, gets you grounded, gets you connected, gets you going. Whatever it is that motivates and juices you up in the morning, you need to run to it. As long as it's healthy and productive, you need to run to that practice, because starting your day off in a way that is beneficial to your heart, mind, body, and soul is always a good thing every single day. I wrote this down, so I want you to remember to tell you that this is how faith gets built. brick by brick. Every single day, every single morning, you get started and you making sure you are putting high test into your emotional and mental tank, right? You using good juice, good juju, good fuel, all that good stuff, right? Matthew chapter 6, verse 5 through 6 says, and teaches us that prayer should happen with sincerity and privacy. This is all about you and your connection to whatever you believe in, right? Prayers of petition, prayers of thanksgiving. You have to know the difference between those things and how they fit into your mindfulness practice. Because this is the time you want to go for heartfelt, straightforward authenticity. You cannot fake your relationship with your God. I don't care who you pray to, it's saint this, that, and another, or you pray to God, or you pray to some version of, or whatever you title or name God to be. It has to be with the sincerest of gratitude, and 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 it's got to be straightforward, right? Now, again, practice helps you become grateful. Practice helps you become useful, but it has to be authentic. It has to be genuine, right? It can't be performative, because if all you're doing is performing and you don't really have the underlying sincerity and the highest ideals in your mind and in your behavior and forethought of being the best that you can possibly be for the reasons of your own spiritual development and your own personal growth, then it's going to be hollow and it's not going to work. That's just my opinion. Luke chapter 4, verse 16 says, and it teaches that Jesus had a custom of entering the synagogue on the Sabbath, indicating a habit of worship. And it says, and there's something to getting together. There's something to the communal aspect of at least once a week, showing up in the same space with others. Uh, it works virtually, but not as much as it does when you are actually physically in the same space. I mean, we might get into that a little bit more next week, but it's important that you communicate and convene. In fact, the last thing I'm going to mention here is in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 46. It teaches that early Christians had a habit of meeting together and breaking bread together from house to house regularly, almost daily, giving them an opportunity to fellowship and commune with one another. And it's in that communion that they were able to develop with the closeness and the intimacy needed to make their relationships much easier. They can avoid chaos and confusion. Unity became something that's so much easier. One of the reasons why we have problems in our society, in my opinion, today, is we don't spend enough time together. We don't spend enough time actually talking about the things that matter, the things that are meaningful, relevant, and significant to us. But if we were to do that and do that more, we can stave off loneliness and a lot of sickness and death. And that is the basic reason why we're talking about this. Now, next week, we're going to get into how all of the major religions uh, come together in a special thought process that helps people to discipline themselves, to practice and shape their character, strengthen their community, and again, deepen their spiritual life. So I'm going to bring my panelists on board and I'm going to ask them to explain to us, you know, what do you do in terms of your spiritual practice and how does it inform your character and help you to become a better person, more engaged in your community, in uh, a better person in business and in the world. Um, if you guys want to bite that off?
Go ahead, Eddie. We'll let you go ahead with that.
Appreciate that, Brother Dan. Thank you so much. Great to be here today. So I grew up second generation immigrant family. We came from Ukraine. We came from Poland. Prior to that, we came from Spain. So we've been traveling for a long time. Quite frankly, right now, I didn't need this at this time in my life. But I grew up in a family where my mother and my father were very open. And I married up. And I'm going to mimic what my mother and father taught me. I'm going to mimic what the Holocaust survivor teachers at Beth Daphila Day School on Old Court Road in Baltimore, Maryland taught me. And I'm going to tell you about a story about my wife's cousin who won the Nobel Peace Prize. And her name is Shireen Ebadi. She was a judge in Iran, and they took it away from her because she was a woman.
Wow.
And they said, you can't be a judge because of your sex. And she left in the middle of the night with my brother-in-law, God bless, of blessed memory, Kamyar Rafatian, and came out of the country, came to the United States for a while, and she's now teaching at a university in England. But one day in a little restaurant in Arlington, Virginia, we were sitting together, and I said, Cousin Shireen, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. And he writes religiously about the Washington Post, and he calls it Eye on the Post, and he tries to keep them on the up and up. And
Right.
he said that the majority of terrorist activity had occurred in the last decade was all Muslim. And I said, nah, come on, what about the Tamil Tigers and the FARC in South? So I said, you know what? Let me ask my cousin. And I asked her, and she said, honey, they like to use the expression June. June means somebody in Farsi that's a loved one. Like if I looked at Marvin, I would say Marvin June because,
Yeah.
because I love the guy. I really do. And she said, there's only two kinds of people in the world, good and bad. And I said to her, that's what my mother told me. You can go play with the good people, but you can't even bring the bad people over to our house. And you can't even go to their house. Forget about it. It ain't going to happen. And I've seen a lot of divisiveness in the past year since October 7th in Israel and prior to that when we had September 11th. And a lot of people telling me, oh, yeah, blacks and Jews don't get along. I'm like, really? Did anybody see Selma? Did you see with MLK? The guy had
Absolutely.
this big beard and a yarmulke on. I guarantee you he wasn't my masseur at the
Right.
country club. He's a serious rabbi, and it's in scriptures, it's done and deal. So to me, when you practice your business on a day-to-day basis, you know right from wrong. And I'm fortunate to be in some, not in all, inner circles. And the way I got into those inner circles was based on trust and based on my behavior and based on my ethics and based on never, ever compromising my ethics for a dollar. Not going to do it. I'm not pulling a Trayon White. God bless him. I'm sorry. I met him many times. Big mistake. And I don't understand what's going on there. Similar to why I don't understand what's happening in Iran and why they got teed up for a change that they wanted for decades and decades for 42 years.
Yep.
So I believe that whatever religion you are, it's something to teach your children right from wrong. And every religion's a good religion because they're all based on that same principle and concept. So that's my
Absolutely.
feeling, Marvin.
We're going to get so much into that next week. It's going to improve that so people understand that it doesn't matter what religion you have, but having one is super helpful to help you understand that right and wrong. If you don't have any spiritual practice or belief system you've grown up in, I feel bad for you because you have to learn right and wrong the hard way. you know, you have to you have to get smacked in the face the hard way. You have nothing to fall back on, when it's all said and done. You don't have You really don't. And I feel for those people. You have any thoughts on this, Daniel?
Well, I don't know if I can go behind Eddie. That was a tremendous story there.
Hey, Eddie, the
No
well
Nobel
one's deep
Peace
with Eddie.
Prizes here are coming
The
forth from my
right.
story. But I think the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil.
Mm,
And we pray daily at Operating in the Black that we are mindful of whose territory that we're playing in when we're dealing with funding and
hmm
money and how you can be easily distracted, as Eddie said, over a dollar. And fortunately, we have we are very true to what we are here to do, which is to help, and we'll let you know if this loan is good for you, if it's bad for you. We will let you know. We do not suffer from commission breath, and so that's something that's in our DNA. We're very, very, you just think about all the people that are robbing people out there, and you just think, man, if there was just one good guy, one good company out there, there would be so many people that could be helped because
Yeah.
because you
Yep.
see it. Things
Truth.
get started great, and then all of a sudden, someone takes a little bit of money that they shouldn't have taken, and then everyone stops believing, so progress stops at that point. So we have been very religious regarding that. One of the things that well, I'm a Christian, and as a young person, I grew up in church, had the opportunity to meet the former president, Mr. Bill Clinton, when he was going through from Arkansas there. And as you grow, you start seeing similar stories. They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I think someone said that. And you see anything that you do that's a shortcut, it'll eventually come back. And the shame, the embarrassment, the hurt, the harm, the tears that you will personally experience, and not only that, that your loved ones through you are going to experience. So you see that the evil one gives you a view of what heaven can be, but it's not really heaven. And the scriptures teach you on the right way to do things. And as you start getting older and you get gray in your mustache or your beard, you realize checkout time is not far away. It's not far away, and we have to give an account. So we are a firm believer in the scriptures regarding that. We will be seeing the words that we say again. We will be seeing the activities that we perform again. So and we want to do the right thing. So that's at the end of the day, it takes a little bit longer to do the right thing, but when you get there, the view is true, and the people that you're there with are amazing. So that's what we feel about it here.
I think what I've learned mostly from watching my parents and grandparents and others practice their beliefs um, is that the love and the satisfaction comes right away from knowing that you're doing the right thing
Right.
Yeah.
immediately. You don't have to wait until somebody gives you a pat on the back or pays you or says to you, you've won an award for this, that and the other. You don't have to wait for any of that because you are so wired in and connected to the practice
Right.
that the joy of being in that right space, that right mindset, that right activity is all you really, really, really need. And I think that that joy, that love is available for all of us. Um, but we do have to teach each other how to tap into it. The reason why I got started with a lot of this thought process has to do with not understanding myself what real happiness was. I found myself as a father wanting to help my child understand what happiness was.
Right.
And I knew what activities to get them. I knew what actions to take, and I knew what was right and wrong, but I didn't quite understand the connection between what's right and joy, because I'm looking for the end result, which is what we call achievement or success, right? That's validated by someone else. But no, that's not it. As I began to study happiness, I had to go back and realize that I may have been taught the right things to do, but I wasn't necessarily taught the connection between the right things to do and the joy and exuberance and satisfaction that I should be experiencing as a result of doing the right things.
Right.
And so it becomes easy then to not do the right things because you haven't done it deep enough and well enough to experience the joy and the happiness and therefore the real success
Well, there's no
of the
happiness
doing.
apart from God. I mean, Deion Sanders said it the best. He had all
Right.
the money in the world. He had all the millions of dollars in the world. He had all the drink. He had everything, and yet he was still not happy. There is no
Yeah.
fulfillment or in life, no true fulfillment, no true joy, unless you're accessing God in the capacity that you know Him, because
Right.
and at the end of the day, it's God who gives you the abilities to do all this stuff anyway. So the arrogance of going, I'm so great, Daniel Winton's the man. No, I couldn't do anything without God. So when you start understanding that, your progress and the progress and joy is a lot richer when you understand why you are here. We love seeing new companies get started. We love birthing new CEOs and things of that nature. We absolutely love that. And the whole goal is that we're hoping those people go out and serve their community so that all the wants and all the desires of the people that are coming to them are solved. And so it's just joy upon joy upon joy. But yeah, I just don't really believe that you can truly experience joy and happiness without God. I just don't believe it.
And it's so funny, and that's why I started with the story from my grandfather, because he did the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again for 30 years. And I don't know a happier person. I don't know that I've met a happier person, a more joyful person. If I saw my grandfather, he was upset about something. It was because somebody made him break his ritual. It was when his age got to a point where he couldn't do the things that he wanted to consistently do. And I really, he loved every minute of it. I remember going out on to the farm with him, and I would go maybe if I was visiting him for the summer or my grandparents for the summer, I would go maybe 3 times a week with my grandfather. Not every day, but he would go every day,
Right.
you know, because he'd come home from work, be home by 3:30, and by 4:30, 5 o'clock, he's on the farm doing some work until the sun goes down, right? And of course, you depend on when and where the spring and summer was, how when the sun was going down.
Right.
But I noticed he was happy and singing and whistling and just joyfully going about that work. This is after he put a full days of work in I think he worked in a mill where he was making twine and textile. He worked in a textile mill.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in the union and all that kind of good stuff, and he worked in the textile manufacturing industry. But he still had enough energy every single day to come home, do his power hour, get ready for church, and then hit the farm and do that work. And I think that there's a understanding of peace and joy that's in the doing, that's in the habits, that we make ourselves or we put ourselves through. That discipline required might not be good the first couple times we do it. At first, like
Never
they
fun.
say, it takes 21 days to lock a habit in,
Right.
right?
Right.
It may be hard.
Yep.
That 21 days might be the most grueling 21 days of your life, right? But after that, all of a sudden it's a thing you do. It becomes you. The habit becomes you. And if you do it well, you can be trusted. People can look at you and go, we know we can trust you because you are a disciplined person. You're a person that has good character. You're a person that we can count on. You've done the same. You'll do the same things that you do because you found the rightness or the righteousness of it in the doing, and that is attractive to people. Reason why we were attracted to Arnold Schwarzenegger, um, because of the muscles he built. I mean, yes, that's how he won the awards and all that
I'm
kind
sure
of
some
stuff.
of
But
those
we
women out
knew,
there were attracted to him for his physique.
no, but we knew the discipline he must have had to do it,
Right.
right? When he spoke back in those days, right? What was he talking about? He was talking about the feeling of pumping iron.
Right.
He wasn't talking about the feeling of winning up on the podium. He was talking about the habit, the discipline, and that's where I think we get, unfortunately, caught up in the results, but not the work, and not the gift that the work is to ourselves and our lives. Anyway, I gotta go, guys. I promised my girls I was going to take them out and do some fun stuff tonight, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. But I wanted to close down the episode with
Not
any
so
last
quick.
thoughts.
Hold on a second.
Go
I
ahead.
need
You're
one
not going that quick. You're not getting away with this. So, my granddaddy had a farm. In fact, he had two farms. One was in Social Security outside of Baltimore. And we called it the Meadows, and it was bought by our neighbors, the Knotts, who made the Meadows Industrial Park. And up until about 3 years ago, you could see our driveway lined with the double trees going up to the old school there, but it's gone now. And the other one was Montgomery Mall, which we sold to Sears. My
Mm.
Uncle Jay, every afternoon at 4 o'clock, left school, and he had a license to drive a car at 14 years old in the state of Maryland to go back and forth to the farm to do his chores on the farm and come home. And on weekends, the whole family went riding out there.
All right.
And
Awesome.
what I'm going to tell you about is that you have a certain level of ethics and that
Yes.
human beings were not made for war. They were made
Right.
for love. And post
Yes.
traumatic syndromes and all these other things happen because of bad people. But remember one thing, when you're doing business and you're practicing business and you want to be successful in business, and I have a really good friend, his name is David Rubenstein. I grew up with him. He's 10 years older than me. He started Carlisle Group, and he says to me,
Mm-hmm.
I judge whether something is good by whether my mama would think it was good. And I do the
Yes.
same thing with my mother, God bless her, who worked for Congressman Clarence Long for many, many years. And I'm just telling you, on Judgment Day, that gate better open up for me because I know that I did a lot of things that I could have made money doing, and I said, no, thank you. Or I
Right.
knew that there were people that I didn't want to be involved with. I'll pass. So keep that in mind as you want to get into the inner circle and you want to have trusted people around you. What David did when he started Carlisle Group was he hired people who were 10 times smarter than him. And that's a pretty hard thing to contemplate because he's a really smart guy.
He
So
is.
think
Right.
about that and think about what Brother Marvin told you today and also what my brother Daniel told you because it comes from the heart from all of us. If you want to exceed and excel, you have to work really hard because God says one thing. I'm out there in the middle of nowhere and I'm in this boat and I can't see any shore at all. And I pray to God, please, God, I know I haven't been so faithful, but just this one time, I swear, if you will get me back home safely, I promise to be your son for the rest of my life. And God opens up the clouds and looks down upon him and says, my son, start rowing.
That's right.
Meaning God helps those that helps themselves. So keep your
Hey.
faith. listen to what we said here today. It's a little off the main track for quantum theory economics, but at the same time, all of it, every component of this makes for whether you can be successful for the long run or whether people are going to look at you and say, I think I'll pass. I don't need this. In Yiddish, we call it surus, which means a big headache. And
I
ask
love
Marvin, he knows he's a genius in Yiddish. So God bless all of you. Thank you so much for having me today. Brother
Thank you.
D, love seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Marvin,
Appreciate it.
I turn it back to you.
Fantastic, guys. I'm going to put you backstage. Unfortunately, I got to go, but I want to sign off really quickly. This has been an amazing episode. If you missed it, go back and watch it. For those of you who are on the fence about, whether you should take up your mantle and move forward, you got to do it. Okay, I'll be back. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.